Friends, we're all back together for the next episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Welcome. Everybody, Jenny is back. We're going to do another I Don't Understand today. Today, the topic is about entities, diabetes organizations, companies, etc., and why the information that they kind of give out about diabetes in social media is so basic. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget, if you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, visit t1dexchange.org/juicebox right now and complete that survey. It will take you 10 minutes to complete the survey, and that effort alone will help to move type 1 diabetes research forward. It will cost you nothing to help. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. Did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too? So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenfortype1.com for more info. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. This is the meter that my daughter has on her person right now. It is incredibly accurate and waiting for you at contournext.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. The Eversense CGM is more convenient, requiring only one sensor every 6 months. It offers more flexibility with its easy on, easy off smart transmitter, and allows you to take a break when needed. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
I feel like we haven't talked in a long time.
We haven't, but why is that? Because I went on vacation and then Arden had to go to college and then I had to cancel with you a couple times.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
my fault. I apologize.
No, I hope your vacation was lovely.
It was, actually. That was our first family vacation together in 6 years, and it was warm and we did some cool things. We went out on a boat and did some like snorkeling, like out to sea snorkeling. That was cool. What else did we do? We did a paddleboard, well, not paddle boat, like clear bottom boat tour through these like mangroves. It was very, very cool. Arden's blood sugar really played nicely. It was great. So we had a good time. We really did. Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you. I'm sure I said to Kelly this morning, like, we can't wait that long to go on vacation again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, you just worked too hard. So, but yeah, thank you.
Good.
I'm going to keep going with the I don't understand.
Fabulous.
Okay. And I'm going to bring the I don't understand today.
Oh, yay.
So this is blended from a couple of things that happened to me over the last couple of weeks involving diabetes.
Okay.
I don't understand why entities share such vanilla information with people, whether it's in their social media or their teaching. And I'm not just saying companies. Now, I'm not saying like, I'm not specifically saying a pump company or a CGM company.
Right. In general.
Pharmacom. I'm not just saying in general, the content that people get is often like, hey, here's a recipe for a cake that you can take to your July 4th, blah, 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 and diabetes. And, you know, like, does diabetes do this? And like, it's the same stuff regurgitated over and over and over again. And I'm always stunned because they have an audience and they could help them, but instead they just churn out the same crap over and over again. I don't know why people do that.
Mm-hmm. I think if we're talking in general statements, again, not about a product in general or, you know, in specific or anything. I like the term vanilla. I really do.
I usually say banal, but I think people don't know what that means sometimes. And then I throw off the conversation with that one.
No, vanilla is perfect in this. I think it's because people are so scared to be what I think should be truthful. and in the truth statement, offending somebody.
Okay.
We are so worried in today's society that something you say or the way that you tell somebody the real right way to do it is going to make them, oh my goodness, like you're saying this against me. My good. Do you know how many times a day I could be offended if I really chose to be? Come on, let it roll. I just, come on.
And so there is that. I think that people's concern about making their content, okay for
friendly.
Everybody. Yeah. Yes. So that no one could possibly get upset ever, does keep it very surface then, because you end up saying things that you're just like, well, this can't possibly make anybody upset. But I think the joke's on them, because someone's still going to be upset. Right?
Someone's still going to be angry. I mean, it's kind of like the whole concept you mentioned, recipe, right? You can put a recipe out and you could even put into it in terms of just the diabetes angle, right? You could say, and in this, I choose to use this product and I choose to use this, and it seems to do this for my blood sugar. But I think it's beneficial to follow up and say, but you know what? That's my N of 1. You go ahead and you give it a try. And if you can't use this or you don't do this, go ahead and do something else. Yeah. I'm just telling you what works for me, right? But just be honest about it.
Yeah. So what brings this up for me is that, did you know if just one person in your family has type 1 diabetes, you're up to 15 times more likely to get it too. So screen it like you mean it. One blood test can spot type 1 diabetes early. Tap now, talk to a doctor, or visit screenedfortype1.com for more info. In a professional setting, a person asked me, well, the conversation started with, like, what are you most proud of about the podcast? And it was a business question, not a helping people question, because my answer is always going to be that it helps people. But they meant business-wise. And I said longevity. I said that, open your Instagram up today, see who's talking diabetes, wait a calendar year, go back and see if you can find them again, right? Like, that's, keeping, current and keeping your popularity up. And they said, well, then how do you do that? And I said, oh, that's easy. I said, I genuinely get up every day and I think, what would help people with diabetes? Like, what could I offer them? What could I pull into the conversation that would help them? And they were like, oh, okay. And I said, that's where the rest of you go wrong. I'm like, you're always saying things that are just like, I don't know, like, oh, insulin's too expensive. Great. Well, we all know that. That doesn't help anybody's blood sugar be stable. You know what I mean? Like, here's a recipe. Have you tried this? I'm not angry about it. I'm just confused about it. Like, they never seem to say anything. And then I realized as I was talking to them, a lot of doctors do the same exact thing, right? Just surface, always surface, never deeper.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that. It's almost like they're afraid to dig down and look for, what do people really want a discussion about? And sometimes I think you may not know until you hear discussion about something that, gosh, I had some of those questions too.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have even thought to ask, or they were subconscious, something like nicking at your brain to, gosh, but you couldn't put words to it, but somebody else did, right? And you need to dig into people's life when you have conversations in order to get the wealth that can help somebody else. And it's not going to help everybody. I pick and choose things I listen to all the time.
Yeah. What I realized is I was doing this thing recently where I asked somebody to kind of expound on their experience, and it was a professional thing. And they just didn't, or they couldn't. I wasn't sure what happened. Like, they defaulted to some pre-written conversation that I could tell while they were saying it, they had said 1,000 times in their life, right? Like, they went back to their script. And I re-asked the question. I was like, no, how does it make you feel? And they couldn't, like, I was stunned. I was like, you don't know how you feel about this? And they're so professionally focused on, like, say these things, use these words, don't say this part. A lawyer told me not to do this, like, right? And I was like, I know there's knowledge inside of you. You don't even know how to let it out.
Right.
And then I changed up the focus a little bit, and I thought I could get them to emote, and they still couldn't. Then I started wondering, like, are some people just better communicators than others? Like, if I said, Jenny, you and I have done this together. I know for people who don't maybe don't have context for this, Jenny and I spoke together in Austin at a live event like last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we speak for 5 or 6 hours to a group?
It's a long time. It was several hours before lunch. And then it was a couple of hours after lunch as well. So I'd say probably 6 hours if you call it that.
The extent of our preparation was standing outside of the door of the auditorium 5 minutes before it started. And I said, hey, do you think we should talk about what we're going to talk about? Then we kind of giggled a little and went inside. And I was like, okay, diabetes, go. I never once looked at you and thought, oh, Jenny's stuck. She doesn't know what to say. She doesn't have anything for this moment. And it made me wonder, do people not have the information and that's why they're not sharing it? Are they gatekeeping the information? I feel like I've seen both. I feel like I've seen people who find themselves. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. Boasting a 6-month sensor, the Eversense CGM offers you these key advantages: distinct on-body vibe alerts when high or low, a consistent and exceptional accuracy over a 6-month period, and you only need 2 sensors per year. No longer will you have to carry your CGM supplies with you. You won't have to be concerned about your adhesive not lasting, accidentally knocking off a sensor, or wasting a sensor when you have to replace your transmitter. That's right, there's no more weekly or bi-weekly hassles of sensor changes, not with the Eversense CGM. It's implantable, and it's accurate. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Eversense CGM is the first and only long-term CGM. Eversense sits comfortably right under the skin in your upper arm, and it lasts way longer than any other CGM sensor. Never again will you have to worry about your sensor falling off before the end of its life. So if you want an incredibly accurate CGM that can't get knocked off and won't fall off, you're looking for the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Contour NextGen blood glucose meter is the meter that we use here. Arden has one with her at all times. I have one downstairs in the kitchen, just in case I want to check my blood sugar. And Arden has them at school. They're everywhere that she is. ContourNext.com/juicebox. Test strips and the meters themselves may be less expensive for you in cash out of your pocket than you're paying currently through your insurance for another meter. You can find out about that and much more at my link, ContourNext.com/juicebox. Contour makes a number of fantastic and accurate meters, and their second chance test strips are absolutely my favorite part. What does that mean? If you go to get some blood and maybe you touch it and, stumble with your hand and slip off and go back, it doesn't impact the quality or accuracy of the test. So you can hit the blood, not get enough, come back, get the rest without impacting the accuracy of the test. That's right. You can touch the blood, come back and get the rest, and you're going to get an absolutely accurate test. I think that's important because we all stumble and fumble at times. That's not a good reason to have to waste a test strip. And with the Contour NextGen, you won't have to. ContourNext.com/juicebox. You're going to get a great reading without having to be perfect. In a position where you would expect they know what they're talking about, but when you start talking to them, realize they don't have a lot. Mm-hmm. And I also feel like I've been around people who know the answer, but they want to be the ones to have the answer. So they don't want you to have it. Have you ever seen that? Gatekeeping the information?
Yes, absolutely. But then who are they going to share it with? You can keep the information, but to your beginning statement is, who's it going to help?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's not their concern.
My goal is to help.
Yeah.
That's not their concern.
But there are people who you would think that was their concern.
You would hope.
Yeah.
Right? Aren't we in this too? My joy every day that I get to work with somebody is truly that I have given them as much as, at the end of my day, my brain feels done. Yeah. Because of all the little bits, the digging and the talking and the digging out the right information from what I know and what I can apply to that particular individual discussion and need.
Right.
And it's different for every single person,
yeah.
right? But you have to be willing to say, why would I hold on to this information if it can help somebody else? Like, why wouldn't I share it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's for a psychologist to figure out for those people. But I've definitely seen people gatekeep their information. Like, I'm the person of power. I want to stay like this. And I've always taken the opposite approach. And people have heard me say this on the podcast for years. Like, I actually believe that the hardest part about my job is that I have to find you, make you believe that I might know what I'm talking about, actually get the information to you, and then be willing to say goodbye at the end.
Right.
Because you might not need this anymore.
Right.
And, you know, in any other media situation, they get a listener, they want to hold on to them. My goal is for you to feel like, man, I don't really need this podcast anymore. Like, you know, like that big picture, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping you feel comfortable enough to go back to your life and be happy and live. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to keep listening, like, God bless you. Thank you. But like, you know, I just find it, I don't know. It's frustrating for me because as much as that person who started that conversation with me was like, Scott, your thing is so popular. Tell me how you did it. I sit there and I think, I'm stunned that more people can't figure out a way to do it. They either don't want to share it all and then this is another part of it. I think it's possible. I want to be completely clear. Like, I couldn't make this podcast if it didn't generate an income for me. Right.
Sure.
Like it's just too much time and it's all of my time.
Yeah.
So I understand that if people are like, look, I can make this content, but I'm going to also have to run a coaching service or I'm going to have to do something because they're not big enough to draw in advertisers and they're not small enough for it to be a part-time thing. So they have to find a way to make money. So they can't give you all the information because they need you to pay them to give you the information so they can keep doing the thing.
Sure.
So that's possibly part of it as well.
And I think sometimes there is also just the want to be truly involved in a community effort of bringing people together in maybe a different way. And that's okay, right? And I think your goals aren't truly to be successful for, hey, everybody look at me and look at what I did, but to be successful for the give to the broader community of people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, truly to be able to gain information that they're not getting from someplace else, right? And so I think all the communities certainly have a pull for certain people.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in all of the different avenues of getting it.
Oh, for sure.
And the effort that, you know, the other, you know, bloggers or podcasters or whatever, their effort is their own effort for whatever reason they have behind what they're doing. Yeah.
I don't listen. You make the point that if you want to reach a lot of people, you have to reach people.
Yes.
There's like I don't know, you have to strike a balance between not being a clown to get eyes and at the same time be entertaining enough that it draws in a mass amount of people so that it can help a mass amount of people.
Correct. And though keep supplying enough information that is building on what's already there.
Yeah.
It's not just rehashing. It is getting more and getting deeper and having further conversation, because despite having one same diagnosis, let's say type 1 diabetes, everybody's life with type 1 diabetes is very different. Yeah. We all have different diagnosis stories. We all have different experience with healthcare practitioners, medications, other conditions in life that we live with, crappy situations we've lived through, you know?
You also have to have a vision for what, I hope I say this correctly, but somebody asked me one time, like they kind of insinuated that my job was to tell people what they wanted to hear. And I said, I think my job is to tell people what they need to know and might not know that they need to know.
Yes.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
They say one of the jobs in the future might be, as much as ChatGPT will, you know, as AI will know things, asking it the right questions in the right way is going to be an art. Right. And so I ask myself, what are these faceless people who I know are listening? Like, what is it that I'm seeing in the community that they don't understand? And I don't need to make them comfortable. I need to give them good information or lead them down a road that they might not think to look down. And you also have to stay ahead of the curve. Like, just thinking back quickly over the years, I take it hard when I do things and people don't like agree with it. So I've taken it over. Well, back in the day, I was like, these CGMs are amazing. And I know that seems really obvious right now, but there was a whole faction of old heads before who wanted to say like, my kid grew up without a CGM and they're fine. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Good for them. I'm glad. This data seems really important. And so for the first 2 years, while I'm out there going like, these CGMs are awesome. People are like, he's a shill. He blah, blah. And I'm like, and now it looks like common sense.
Right.
Present day, same thing's happening with GLP meds. I'm like, I think there's something here. And people are like, I swear to God, somebody said to me, you're pushing the GLP agenda. I don't know what, I don't know what you think is happening in the world.
I think that if there weren't enough people who were experiencing the benefit of this particular medication, right, that you wouldn't have people coming and saying, hey, I'd like to tell you my story with this, right? Yeah. You'd have silence. You'd have, okay, well, it sounds great, but I don't know anything because I don't want to try it myself, So yeah, I don't think that there's necessarily an agenda.
I mean, but this person was like saying like, basically like you're strapping pharma to your back and carrying them on this. They're trying to sell this GLP thing. And I was like, listen, what I'm telling you is I'm seeing people with diabetes using this and a lot of good things are happening for some of them. I think we should look at it more. And again, it'll be one of those things that 2 years from now, it'll see like common sense and no one will remember this part.
But again, what you're talking about is already being studied. Yeah. So you're not putting out any I want to make research out of this and put together all of this information to put out there as a whole, whatever. If it wasn't actually happening, then they would not be studying the use of it in people with type 1 now, right?
It's not like I took an aspirin for a headache and my toenails grew faster. And I was like, I think somebody should look into this connection between nail growth and aspirin. Like, am I the only one saying this? Like, plenty of people are seeing what's happening. But it's when you're talking about it out on the bleeding edge of this community connection, like there's a couple people talking GLP. And other than that, everybody else is like, are you sure? Like, does it make you sick? Should you be doing it? What about muscle wasting? Like, it's a lot of fear mongering around it or being so careful that they're not willing to look at some of the positive things that are happening.
And or even do their own research, right? Yeah. You can hear something about, and or you can hear somebody's one N of one, again, kind of story. If you really are concerned, then do your research. Yeah. Look outside of this person's story. Look at what is actually in the research, what's being done, why they're considering the potential use of this beyond just type 2 and beyond the weight management.
You got to pick through what you're hearing. Like I'm pretty comfortable saying to you, I think if you pre-bolus your meals consistently, your A1C could come down a full point, right?
Yeah.
But I've had people come to me and say, listen, I pre-bolus and I get low every time. So I'll say, well, if your basal is right, if your settings are correct, if your insulin sensitivity is right, and that's happening to you, it sounds like you don't need to pre-bolus. I'm not saying like do it anyway. I'm saying this is what I've noticed. You go check into that for yourself. Is it valuable for you? Great. Is it like even with the GLPs, some people have stomach issues. They can't take it.
Correct.
It's not for you then. And yeah,
absolutely. I have no need or desire to personally use it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. So I can talk about it. I can tell people about it. I can talk through in the avenue of their individual. Could it be useful? Yeah. Why are you considering it? And if you are there other things in place already that we haven't adjusted or they're not in place yet that we haven't adjusted? We could go there first and then revisit this conversation, right? I mean, it's just like your pre-bolus. Well, you're pre-bolusing for grilled chicken. That's probably why you're going low.
Yeah, we don't need that. And that's the point, right? That's the bigger point around all this. There's an example of where you need more information. And it can't just all be dumped onto you in 1 second. So I'll make the point there that maybe that's why people don't give more specific advice because they can't give enough of it to make sure they've covered the whole thing. Whereas if you have this platform that I have, it can be spread out. People can take their time to absorb it and hopefully get enough of it to put together that puzzle for themselves.
Yeah, I would agree.
I get frustrated when somebody says, like, I'm a professional. I know this stuff. And then you listen to them and they speak for 20 minutes. And when they're done, I think, they didn't even say anything. Like,
yes.
They just talked and talked and talked, and there's nothing left here. If I ask you 5 minutes from now what that person said, you won't remember anything from it.
You know how many conferences that I've gone to with the hopes of a topic being really like dug into, like the nitty gritty of information that I want to pull more out of than the surface level. And I walk away thinking I could have read the PowerPoint presentation in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I flew here for this.
I flew here for this.
And it feels like their presentation is made from a Google search that just returns the basic ideas of the thing, right? And when you go to dig down, they go, what? Yeah, we don't have time for that right now.
Or they're constrained by some other disclosure, like they have an association with somebody and they can't, as you were saying, they're sort of contained into what they can say, and they do know more, but they can't say more because somebody told them that they can't.
So I use ChatGPT all the time. So I asked it this question, and it says that for reasons of professionalism and ethical standards, this might be one reason why a healthcare professional wouldn't give more, but also fear of misinformation and liability. It goes on, risk of reputation and damage. Like if I tell you something and you get it wrong, even if I'm right, and then you go off and you say, oh, my doctor said this and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then you're screwed in the community. Like that's understandable. There can be institutional guidelines that they have to follow, but they'd also talked about a conservative culture in medicine. Traditionally, medicine is a conservative hierarchy with a strong emphasis on adhering to established norms and protocols. That's something too. It's like, as treatments move forward, you're still talking about whatever you heard in medical school and whatever the writings say. And I actually heard a doctor talking about this recently. Like there's all these advancements, but the papers don't reflect them. Like the papers reflect them, right? So the research reflects it, the papers reflect it, but it never gets moved back into the teaching at the medical school. The medical school's teaching off of papers from decades ago sometimes.
Eons ago, absolutely. And the unfortunate thing about teachings in medical school, now, of course, we have so much that's being taught that's relative to medicine use. And I'm trying to be careful. I'm trying to be vanilla.
Jenny's like, well, you don't want to insult anybody, and it's not my desire to insult anybody.
No, I don't want to insult, but truly and completely, the majority of information that is taught and given, and where they get their information that then gets fed into the patient and what the patient is going to be provided with in terms of a medication, it comes from research that's been conducted by the companies that want their product to be the one that's put out there. I hate that because I think medication is an important piece of navigating health conditions in some circumstances. But if that's all you're using as your basis, and you're not going to the first step, the first line, which is more preventative, there are so many lifestyle things that could be being taught to incoming doctors in medical school to be able to say, this is the first step to teach the patients you work with. You want to care for people. You want to do no harm. Teach them to live a healthy life. If that isn't working and they've put that in, then move into this researched potential use that could benefit their efforts that are already in place, right?
As you're talking, I thought, is there just a way to like tax everybody 50 cents per person, put all the money in a pile, and then use that money to pay researchers and lawyers to be on the side of the people? Not the side of the government, not the side of a company, but the people. Like, right? Just
the people.
Because that's what you need, is you need someone out there doing this research for you.
Yes.
And then throw it all out into the world and let it shake out where
and then it would be honest, right? It would be not vanilla. It would be these are the ground rule facts. This is what you should know and move forward.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that
live long and be prosperous.
Get out there. Well, you made a point a second ago, right? Like if you can, by eating well and exercising and living a life that your body needs, live healthy, then great. And if you have processes in your body that aren't working well enough, that's not enough for it, then let's see if there's a pharmaceutical or something else that can help you with it.
Right.
That's all. I mean, it makes a ton of sense to me to start at that basic. But as soon as you do that, you're going to get argued with by 17 different people who are going to tell you the way to eat is everything you open your mouth with becomes some sort of a fight. I'm answering my own question, by the way, why companies don't get involved in specific.
Yes.
Yeah. There's no way to win. If you said, hey, even if you said, eat well, someone would go, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And then now we're arguing about that for 10 years. And then that pisses away and people finally stop arguing about that. And then you move on to the next step, and then it starts all over again. There's 5 different opinions, 5 different financial perspectives, and everybody wants their thing to be the thing.
Right. And I think what it honestly brings in that you're kind of skirting around is that we need discussions to happen.
Yeah.
We should not shy away from discussion. We should not shy away from bringing up hard points, like uncomfortable discussion points. We should be happy to be able to talk about something that is not vanilla.
Yeah, right. Let's have a deeper conversation and disagree. That's fine. Be nice.
Right.
Like that's even like I cultivate what I think is maybe the kindest Facebook group around diabetes that I've ever seen, but it's based on you're all adults. I'm not going to tell you what to say. Just however you eat, however you feel, love. I don't even care. Like, go ahead and have your conversations, but then be nice. And it's interesting. I had this thing happen the other day. I can talk about this probably, right? So there was a post. I don't want to out anybody. There's a post that comes up and somebody says, this is one of the most controversial posts in diabetes. What would you bolus for this? Like, you know what I mean? And it's a photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually,
which I've seen in a million different places, not just, people post all the time. Look at the bowl of ice cream and all the toppings, and it looks like a kitchen sink full of stuff. And I'm like, well, that's a wide guess.
A lot, I'm guessing. But but somebody will come in and say, hey, well, I see this in there and that. You're going to get an impact quickly from this. There might be some fat in there. You get a lot of thoughtful answers, but there's always one person that can't stop themselves from saying, I just wouldn't eat it. Well, no one asked you that. I didn't ask you,
that
hey. That
wasn't the question.
Question wasn't, hey, would you eat this? And so something like that happened where a person came in and said like, I think that if you ate a different quality of food and blah, blah, blah. And then someone got insulted by that. And I'm like, okay, that's legitimate. I have one of my rules in my Facebook group is don't tell people how to eat. And so this person gets very angry that this person told another person how to eat. Now we've got 3 people involved. And the person who gets angry about it then fires back at that person, very rude. And I removed the rude comment and I said, please be kind. Like, next time somebody does something like that, report that comment. I will take care of it. Because I would have taken that comment out and said, please don't tell somebody how to eat. That's all I would have done, right? Well, that person left the group in anger because they didn't want to be told what to do. And I was like, you just got mad because that person was cruel. You were 3 times crueler to them in return. And now you're mad at me? I was like, and then I'm dumb enough to get on here and ask you this question when the obvious answer is you can't win.
Can't win. No, you can't win. There you go.
So, Jenny, I think we're getting back to what you started with. If people want to know why they're not getting straightforward information from companies and entities, it's because they're scared to talk to you all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. They're scared. And companies especially, they're scared to be sued. If they get back to you with an answer that's 100% the nitty gritty truth of what they're doing. I mean, it is the reason that today I am so not in love with all of the pharmaceutical commercials. I mean, I grew up with Band-Aid and aspirin, Bayer aspirin and Band-Aids. Those were the commercials for medical care on TV, right? Today, it's not this and not that, whatever it is, but they have to put in some of those sort of things that could be symptoms after, because you know what? They don't want to get ground out for not stating, well, you could have headaches with this medication because one person had it in a study of 300,000 people.
Yeah. If your eyes start bleeding and fall out your asshole, please. What did that happen to one person? But yeah, so you have to disclaimer everything, which I'm not against, but it's just very interesting. By the way, now I have the I am stuck on Band-Aid brand because Band-Aid stuck on me. Yeah, I guess got stuck in my head, and now I feel very old. But here's the problem, okay? So if whether it's a diabetes website who's captured an audience and is feeding you information, it ends up being just this banal vanilla information, or it's a company who's not willing to say, maybe you should look at this if our product's not working for you. What it ends up leading to is people with diabetes are misserved, right? They have a difficulty managing their blood sugars. They get increased anxiety. They're frustrated. They misinterpret things. They make self-management errors and then misinterpret why those errors happened. Then it's just a tumble, right? You lose empowerment. You feel disengaged. And before you know it, you've got a 9 A1C and you think, oh, this is the best I can do. Mm-hmm. And so isn't it interesting if that is that loop, which is people won't speak up and say what works because they're afraid of all the things that we discussed. In the end, it doesn't hurt those people. It hurts the audience, and those people have diabetes. It's the one thing, like I know I've told this story on the podcast before, but I wrote a blog for a long time and it was popular. It was really, really popular. And one day I just realized I'm just saying what everybody else is saying. This is silly. Like I'm going to start sharing directly what's helping Arden.
Right.
And when I did that, the blog got massively more popular. But I'm also at that point a blogger. I can say, hey, there's a disclaimer page on here that says, don't listen to me. Anything you read here is for entertainment purposes, like that thing.
Right.
A company can't come out and say, hey, this information is for entertainment purposes, but I would change your basal if I was you.
Right.
And like that's not going to work.
Right.
But when I saw that help people, and then when I moved it to a different medium where it's easier to reach people and it's easier for people to like absorb the information, the amount of people I saw help with it exploded. And then that's what frustrates me. I'm like, I don't reach everybody. And some people don't like me, which is totally cool. Yeah. But if you don't like me, but you still don't know how to pre-bolus, I want someone else to be telling you how to do it if it's not me, right? And that just doesn't happen. And then I get super frustrated about it because I want people to be well, whether they get the information here or somewhere else.
Yeah. I think the other piece in terms of companies, especially diabetes companies, that is frustrating from the coding of what you get told when you call in with a complaint is that they're choosing to use your product to benefit their life in a really significant way, right? So if each individual person uses a product and has some minor things that are easy to overcome, but some people have more specific, really considerable issues, but you're still feeding them the same response. That's what also makes people really, really frustrated, right? If you're going to replace something, replace it because you've said you're going to replace it. If you're not going to replace it, then you don't replace it for anybody, no matter what. But you can't like cherry pick, so to speak, who gets something, who doesn't get something, what you say to somebody. And I think that is where on that end of calling into customer service, you get a little bit more, get the tip of the iceberg, you get the person who's reading off of the form that says, this is how to answer this type of question that comes in. But in diabetes, especially with products, again, we need more than that because this is impacting our life.
And if you're the one giving out that information, you have to understand that whatever is said is going to be received by the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of your TikTok or wherever it is as all of the information. They're not going to wonder if there's more. They're going to think if there was more to it, you would have said it. And so when you give incomplete answers, the person hearing them believes it's a complete answer.
Correct.
That's why it works so poorly with management ideas, because if you can't give it all, then you're not going to be able to succeed. And even with like the, like you said, with how to use a device. And I understand device manufacturers are prohibited by the FDA. They're not allowed to tell you how to use them. That's not allowed. But they find ways to get good information out into the world. And it can be done.
They do.
I did it with Omnipod for Omnipod 5. We put together a 3-part series that very completely explains how to use Omnipod 5, right? It's awesome. And they should be lauded for the amount of effort and time that a ton of people behind the scenes put into making sure that content was valuable, right? But you don't see that from a lot of places. And I'm not blaming like another pump company or something like that. I've even learned to believe that it's not just because they don't want to. They might not have the staff for it. The staff might not have the expertise for it. There's a lot of reasons why stuff like that doesn't happen.
Right.
But mostly I think it's the stuff we've covered here.
I think in what you just said too is that I think people get frustrated because they can see that the company isn't being openly honest about what they can tell you or what they know, right? You know what? If you don't know how to answer a question or you can't answer it because you're bound by legal kind of, constraints, then tell me that. Tell me that so that I don't remain frustrated with the problem that I'm having. And I've called 6 times and I get 6 different answers, but the real answer is that you just can't tell me because you really don't know yet.
Miss Smith, I'm sorry, but the FDA precludes us from answering that question. The problem is that the next thing they're going to say is you should ask your doctor. And then apparently, if you're unlucky, you're going to get to your doctor and they're going to go, I don't know.
Call the company.
You should call the company. You see people do that all the time. They bounce them back and forth because nobody wants, in the end, listen, there are plenty of great people, okay? And this is not a blanket statement. But when you run into those people who aren't great, in the end, what you're going to run into is people who are covering their own ass. And that's that. And you do not know if that's who you're talking to or not. That's always my problem. It's like, I don't know. Am I talking to an ass cover or am I talking to somebody who doesn't know? Or is there really no answer? That's all.
Right.
Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. There. Now,
yes, I have no affiliations with anybody.
I don't know those people. But then you share your stories and hopefully people can cherry pick and take things out that'll help them or resonate with their experience. They go, oh, I never thought of it that way. I just helped somebody the other day. A person emailed me and said, my kid's on Omnipod 5. They're in college. He's starting to take his health much more seriously.
That's awesome.
I was so excited. Exercising more, eating better, but he's getting low a lot. And I was like, oh God, I know the right answer here. The answer is that algorithm is working.
Is overgiving.
It's just overgiving insulin based on his needs prior, and it's not shifting quickly enough in this kid. So my thought was, what I thought was like reset it. You know what I mean? Like figure out what your total daily insulin is and start over. But I can't just email a stranger back and say, hey, here's medical advice, right? So I go, if this was happening to me, I would wonder if blah, blah, blah. And then I might look into making sure my settings are clear. And then maybe the algorithm could benefit from being, reset with those new numbers. Reset. And as I was writing it, I felt ridiculous because I'm still saying the same damn thing. You know what I mean? But
you are, but you're putting in a disclosure so that it can't come back to you. You're saying, if it were me, this is what I would do. I mean, I'm asked things all the time from a personal as well as a clinical perspective. And sometimes I give clinical perspective based on a professional stance, right? But my personal perspective is because of personal experience. Right. And I can say, you know what? But that isn't what I do because it doesn't work for Jenny.
Well, in the end, I'm looking at my inbox and I'm thinking, can I really ignore this and let this poor kid who's trying to pull his shit together? Am I going to let him give up and live a life of poor health because I don't have the balls to answer this question? You know what I mean? Right. So I answered him. And I guess that's where my frustration comes from with everybody else. What if we all just did the right thing? Like going back to why I mentioned that the podcast is popular. The podcast is popular because it helps people. And then they tell other people, I was helped here. Like imagine if we were all doing that, how much more quickly people would be, brought forward with their outcomes. That's just, I don't know. Anyway, I understand why you guys don't do what I said an hour ago, but I get frustrated by it. And I'm so sick of seeing your freaking recipes for that cake that I can bring to my July 4th that won't make my blood sugar spike. It's just Jenny, by the way, the secret is using whipped cream for the icing.
Oh, whipped cream for the icing. Lovely. So, because it's not real frosting.
It doesn't have all that sugar in it and everything. And if I ran a website for type 1 diabetes, I would probably end up having to do what they're doing. But it still frustrates the hell out of me that that's how they do it. And, I just wish people would just be more forthcoming. If they know, they should say. And if they don't know, they should stop pretending they know. That's pretty much what I think. Anyway.
Stop. Don't put the 4th of July recipe out anymore.
Yeah,
I
don't know. Just stop. It's so upsetting.
I clearly have not visited whatever you're looking at.
I'm so afraid that the website that does it's going to be like, hey, he's directly talking about us. But I think they could figure it out too. And I feel badly, but it's so weird that we live in a world where a person can have a medical question and be better off going to the Juicebox Podcast Facebook group and asking a bunch of faceless strangers and come up with a better answer than if they went to their doctor, the company they bought the thing from, or it just, I don't know. I find it weird. Like I'm almost here arguing against myself. Like, I don't think this is how it should work.
I think with technology today, if it wasn't you, I think somebody else would have likely figured something similar out.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in whatever way. But I think because you were so quick to the move from just being a blogger into putting that voice specific connection, I think especially in the past several years where we've gone through a lot of poor social interaction, like true seeing somebody, I think podcasts really have bloomed because it was the closest to socializing that you could get. And with you talking to so many different people all over the world, it was a great way to feel like you were almost having a conversation.
Yeah. No, I agree. But at the same time, it's only working because I'm being so authentic and honest while I'm doing it. Because there's other people doing this, and they run banal all the time as well. Listen, it went all the way back to when I was blogging. What I noticed that made me, it was confusing, is that people would get popular by being a blogger, which is to say that they're speaking to people very genuinely, right? And then when their popularity rose, the first thing they do was make over their website. Then all of a sudden it looked like a pharma website. Like they put some money into it, they shined it up, and then they took themselves too seriously, and then they stopped saying what they thought, and then they somehow turned into the thing that they were railing against the year before. And I was like, well, that was weird. I was like, you just stopped doing all the things that made you popular. Like, because they wanted to look, I don't know,
more professional, maybe, or more like a knowledgeable resource.
Yeah. Trust me, they did the wrong thing, Jenny. My website looks like a 5-year-old made it. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Go check it out. But it works and all the information's there. And I don't care if it doesn't look fancy, you know? And by the way, that website it's really great traffic. So
I'm sure it does.
I don't know. Anyway, all right. I appreciate you talking to me about this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
A huge thanks to the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. Your kids mean everything to you, and you do anything for them, especially if they're at risk. So when it comes to type 1 diabetes, screen it like you mean it. Because if even just one person in your family has type 1, your child is up to 15 times more likely to get it. But just one blood test can help you spot it early. So don't wait. Talk to your doctor about screening. Tap now or visit screenfortype1.com to get more info and screen it like you mean it. A huge thank you to Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Are you tired of having to change your sensor every 7 to 14 days? With the Eversense CGM, you just replace it once every 6 months via a simple in-office visit. Learn more and get started today at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. If you or a loved one was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and you're looking for some fresh perspective, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to start. That series is with myself and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a CDCES, a registered dietitian, and a type 1 for over 35 years. And in the Bold Beginnings series, Jenny and I are going to answer the questions that most people have after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. The series begins at episode 698 in your podcast player, or you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on Bold Beginnings in the menu. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com. I know that Facebook has a bad reputation, but please give the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast a healthy once-over. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. The group now has 47,000 members in it. It gets 150 new members a day. It is completely free, and at the very least, you can watch other people talk about diabetes. And everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, everyone is welcome. Go up into the featured tab of the private Facebook group, and there you'll see lists upon lists of all of the management series that are available to you for free in the Juicebox Podcast. Becoming a member of that group, I really think it will help you. It will at least give you community. You'll be able to kind of lurk around, see what people are talking about, pick up some tips and tricks. Maybe you can ask a question or offer some help. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook.